A woman discovers her sibling secretly applied for the same career position she worked years to earn. When the company chooses the sibling, she uncovers a shocking manipulation behind the decision. The applause started before I even registered the name. I stood near the back of the conference room, hands clasped, waiting for the announcement I'd spent years working toward. The executive stepped up to the podium, smiled, and said it clearly, my sibling's name. Not mine. I didn't move. I didn't blink. I just stood there, frozen, while the room erupted in cheers. My colleagues clapped, some turned to offer congratulations, and a few glanced at me with awkward sympathy. I felt my stomach drop, my breath catch. I had prepared for this moment, rehearsed my speech, imagined the pride in my parents' eyes. But none of it belonged to me now. My sibling walked to the front, smiling like they'd won a raffle. They shook hands, posed for photos, and gave a short, breezy thank you. I watched from the shadows, my heart pounding, my thoughts spiraling. I had worked late nights, missed holidays, sacrificed weekends. I had earned this. Or so I thought. After the ceremony, I found them near the coffee station. You applied? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. They shrugged. Yeah. Just for fun. I didn't think I'd actually get it. I stared at them. You never told me. They sipped their drink, eyes darting away. Didn't want to make it weird. Besides, you were already a front-runner. Their tone was light, but something in their eyes felt rehearsed. I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't spontaneous. It was calculated. That night, I sat at my kitchen table staring at my untouched dinner. The silence in the apartment felt louder than usual. I replayed every conversation we'd had over the past few months. The casual questions about my job, the interest in my projects, the way they'd asked about my team dynamics. I'd thought they were just curious. Supportive even. I opened my laptop and scrolled through old messages. There it was, an email I'd forwarded them weeks ago, outlining the leadership role's requirements. I had sent it innocently, thinking they'd be proud of me. Now I wondered if it had been the blueprint for their application. At work, I tried to stay professional. I congratulated them publicly, smiled when others mentioned the promotion, and kept my head down. But the betrayal lingered. I felt invisible in meetings, overlooked in discussions. My ideas were met with polite nods while theirs were praised. It was as if the title had erased my years of contribution. One afternoon, I passed by their new office. The door was open and they were laughing with a manager I used to report to. I paused, unseen, and listened. She's taking it well, my sibling said. I was worried she'd be upset. The manager chuckled. You earned it. Timing's everything. I walked away before they saw me, my chest tight. Timing? I had spent years preparing. What timing were they talking about? That weekend I visited my parents. They were thrilled about the promotion, gushing over my siblings' drive and ambition. I smiled, nodded, and excused myself early. On the drive home, I gripped the steering wheel tighter than usual, my knuckles white. I began journaling again. I hadn't done it in years, but the pages welcomed me like an old friend. I wrote about the sacrifices, missing my niece's birthday, skipping vacations, staying late to finish reports no one read. I wrote about the pride I'd felt when I was shortlisted, the hope that had carried me through hard days. And I wrote about the moment it all slipped away. One evening, I bumped into a colleague at the elevator. She hesitated, then said, I thought you were getting that role. I nodded. So did I. She looked around, then leaned in. They asked a lot of questions about you. Months ago. I thought it was odd. I thanked her and stepped into the elevator alone. Her words echoed in my mind. Questions. Months ago. It hadn't been casual curiosity. It had been preparation. Back at home, I opened my laptop again. I searched for internal documents, old memos, anything that might show a trail. I found nothing concrete, but the pattern was clear. They had positioned themselves perfectly, using my insights, my experience, my trust. I confronted them again, this time in private. You planned this, I said. You used everything I told you. They didn't deny it. It's not personal, they said. It's just how things work. You should have protected your ideas. I stared at them, stunned. We're family. They shrugged. That doesn't change the game. I walked away, my heart heavy. The dream I thought was mine had been taken, not by chance but by strategy. And the person who took it had worn the mask of support until the moment it no longer served them. That night, I sat by the window watching the city lights flicker. I thought about quitting, about walking away from the company, the role, the betrayal. But something inside me resisted. I had earned my place. I had built my reputation. And I wasn't going to let it be rewritten by someone else's ambition. I didn't know what came next. But I knew one thing: I wasn't done. I walked away from the window that night with a heaviness I couldn't shake. The city lights had blurred into streaks of gold, but all I could see was the smirk on my sibling's face, the casual shrug that had dismissed years of my effort. Something inside me whispered that this wasn't just luck. There was more beneath their victory, and I had to find it. The first signs were subtle. Colleagues who once greeted me warmly now avoided eye contact. Conversations stopped when I entered the room. Emails I should have received never arrived, and meetings I had always been part of suddenly excluded me. At first I thought it was coincidence, a shift in office dynamics. But the pattern grew too clear to ignore. I began keeping notes. Dates, names, missing messages. Each entry felt like a puzzle piece sliding into place. One afternoon I sat in the cafeteria pushing food around my plate. A coworker joined me, chatting casually. In the middle of their story they slipped. "Your sibling had inside help," they said, then froze, realizing what they'd revealed. I leaned forward. "Inside help? What do you mean?" They hesitated, glancing around. I shouldn't have said that. But someone in HR. They made sure the application stood out. My chest tightened. "Are you saying they interfered with the process?" The coworker lowered their voice. "I don't know details. Just, things were pushed forward. Smoothed over." I nodded, masking my fury. When they left, I sat alone, the cafeteria noise fading into a dull roar. Inside help. That explained the sudden shift, the missing emails, the closed doors. That evening, I returned home and opened my laptop. I dug through old emails, searching for anything unusual. Hours passed, the glow of the screen burning my eyes. Then I found it. Attachments forwarded to my sibling. Confidential documents. Performance reviews. Internal memos. Even my application draft. My hands trembled as I scrolled. They had access to everything, every detail that should have been private. I felt sick. Betrayal wasn't just personal now. It was professional, calculated, deliberate. The next day I confronted them. I walked into their office holding printed copies of the emails. "You had access to my documents," I said, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. They leaned back in their chair, unfazed. So you cheated," I snapped. "You used my work, my reviews, my draft. You manipulated the process." They shrugged, their tone cold. "It's just business. You should have protected your work better." I stared at them, stunned. "We're family." Their eyes narrowed. "Family doesn't matter in competition. You wanted the role. So did I. I won." The chill in their voice cut deeper than any blade. I walked out, my hands shaking, my heart pounding. That night I couldn't sleep. I replayed their words, the casual cruelty, the dismissal of everything I had sacrificed. I realized this wasn't just about the role. It was about dignity. About refusing to let manipulation define me. I reached out to a mentor, someone I trusted deeply. We met in a quiet cafe, the hum of conversation around us fading as I poured out the story. I showed them the emails, the notes, the evidence. They listened carefully, their expression grave. "This is serious," they said. "You've been undermined. But you're not powerless." I leaned forward. "What do I do?" "Document everything," they advised. "Every email, every meeting you were excluded from, every detail. Build your case. Don't let emotion cloud it, let the facts speak." Their words steadied me. For the first time in weeks I felt a flicker of control. I began documenting relentlessly. I created folders, labeled files, organized timelines. Each piece of evidence became a brick in the wall I was building. A wall strong enough to stand against manipulation. At work I kept my composure. I smiled when necessary, nodded in meetings, and played the role of the professional. But beneath the surface I was gathering strength. One evening I overheard a conversation in the hallway. Two colleagues whispered about favoritism and strings pulled. I didn't interrupt, but I noted every word. Another time I found a memo that had been altered. My name removed, my siblings inserted. I printed it, added it to the growing pile. Each discovery fueled my determination. I wasn't just fighting for a role anymore. I was fighting for my dignity, my years of sacrifice, my right to be seen. The betrayal had cut deep, but it had also sharpened me. I realized I had underestimated the lengths my sibling would go. But I wouldn't underestimate myself again. Late at night, I sat at my desk, the lamp casting a warm glow over the papers. I looked at the evidence spread before me, emails, memos, notes. It was all there, the truth behind their victory. I whispered to myself, this isn't over. And for the first time I believed it. I sat at my desk late into the night, the evidence spread across the table like fragments of a broken mirror. Emails, memos, notes. All of it pointed to the truth I had uncovered. My hands trembled as I drafted the formal complaint, each word carrying the weight of sleepless nights and the sting of betrayal. When I finally pressed send, I felt both terrified and liberated. The process was slow. Days passed, then weeks, and the silence from the company gnawed at me. At work, I felt the stares. Colleagues whispering, managers avoiding me, the awkward pauses when I entered a room. Fear of retaliation lingered in every corner. Would they side with my sibling? Would they dismiss me as bitter? I carried those questions like stones in my chest, but I refused to back down. My sibling didn't stay quiet. One evening they cornered me in the parking lot, their voice sharp. Do you realize what you're doing? You'll ruin the family. I met their gaze, steady and unflinching. You already did that when you betrayed my trust. For the first time they faltered. Their bravado cracked, and I saw the flicker of unease in their eyes. I walked away, my footsteps echoing against the pavement, each one a declaration that I would not be silenced. The company finally launched an internal investigation. I was called into a small conference room, the blinds drawn, the air heavy with tension. An HR representative sat across from me, recorder on the table. Tell us everything, they said. I spoke calmly, laying out the timeline, presenting the documents, explaining the manipulation. My voice didn't shake. I had rehearsed this moment in my mind countless times, and now it was real. Later I learned my sibling was interviewed too. The tension in the office grew palpable. People avoided choosing sides, but the atmosphere was thick with anticipation. I kept my composure, knowing the truth was finally being heard. Weeks dragged on, each day a test of patience. I poured my energy into small victories, finishing projects, mentoring younger colleagues, reminding myself that my worth wasn't defined by a title. At night, I journaled, capturing the emotional toll, the sleepless nights, the awkward stares, the gnawing fear. Writing became my anchor, a way to keep my resolve intact. Then the outcome arrived. My sibling was removed from the role. The announcement was brief, clinical, delivered in an email that circulated through the company. There was no fanfare, no applause, just silence. I sat at my desk, reading the words over and over. Relief washed over me, but it was bittersweet. The damage to our relationship was permanent. The sibling I once trusted was now a stranger. Days later, I was offered a new opportunity. A role tailored to my strengths, one that recognized my years of dedication. This time it was mine alone. I accepted, my heart steady, my voice clear. The first day in my new position, I walked into the office with my head high. Colleagues greeted me warmly, some offering quiet congratulations. I felt the shift. The respect returning, the whispers fading. I wasn't invisible anymore. But reclaiming my voice wasn't just about the role. It was about rebuilding my confidence, reconnecting with the people who had supported me, and moving forward with clarity. I reached out to colleagues I had distanced myself from, inviting them for coffee, listening to their stories. Slowly, the bonds I thought were broken began to mend. One afternoon, I sat with a younger employee who confessed they were struggling. I feel like no one notices me, they said. I smiled gently. I know that feeling. But trust me, your work matters. Don't let anyone take that from you. Their eyes lit up, and I realized my journey had given me something unexpected. The ability to guide others through their own storms. At home, I reflected on everything. Betrayal had hurt deeply, but it had also taught me to protect what I'd earned. I thought about the nights I had doubted myself, the moments I had felt invisible, the fear that had nearly consumed me. And I thought about the strength I had found, the courage to speak, the determination to fight, the clarity to reclaim my voice. One evening, I sat by the window again, watching the city lights flicker. This time they didn't blur into streaks of gold. They shone steady like beacons. I whispered to myself, my voice was never lost. It was waiting to be reclaimed. And I believed it.